Hey guys, welcome to the Mistwood Publishing Book Club. I am your host, S.R. Mowry, and today we'll be looking at The Veil of Stars, Chapter 2. So just a quick reminder, the book is available at the Mistwood Publishing website. Physical book, feels really nice, very nice texture. Yeah. And if just for $1 more, not only do you get the signature, of course that comes with any book purchase, but if you pay $1 more, you can choose between two bookmarks. This is the Narbad one, and this is the Neris one. Both are characters in the story and are relevant to the book. We also have the visual companion, we have mugs, and we have various other products related to the Veil of Stars, which can be nice. But anyway, Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is a nice short little chapter. We are opened up with Karam fulfilling his mission that was given to him by Bjorn and Is. And again, that is because he is not a son of Vandir. So, as we know from the epilogue, the armor that was made from the Tree of Yggdrasil, the Tree of Life, it's very important because it's the one thing that can kill a son of Vandir or Vandir himself. So obviously Is and Bjorn have an interest in eliminating that threat, so they get Karam the Lich to go in and steal it from Kor, who is a Gema, and the Gema, as it is explained, are essentially lowercase gods or guardians that are put in charge of certain geographical criteria or specific locations. And they're kind of meant to replace the Griffins a little bit because a lot of the Griffins died in the War of Ragnarok, so the Gema were kind of made around the same time as the Orcs were for kind of just, they're kind of like Gandalfs, if you will. They're not mortal, but they can be killed, but they're also not mortal, so it's kind of a confusing line. And they are more of like guiding forces in the world. So Kor is one of those, and he's kind of like the guardian or the lowercase god, the new lowercase god of war. So he's kind of an intimidating figure, and if you read his description there on page 31, you might be able to pick up that he is he's inspired from one of my favorite comic book characters, and that is Hawkman. Hawkman is like an angry blend between Wolverine and Indiana Jones, but with wings and a mace. He's got quite the temper, and he's also a historian and archaeologist. So I've always liked Hawkman a lot. Hawkman tends to, at least traditionally in the comics, align with me on a lot of more political topics as well, so I've always really liked Hawkman a lot. So you can kind of notice that there's some similarities, but obviously he's also very, very different in appearance than Hawkman, because obviously I take inspiration from things, but I also really want it to be unique. If I wanted Hawkman, I'd read a Hawkman story, so I want to make something that is new and definitely unique to me. So Kor definitely, he doesn't look a lot like Hawkman, but there are similarities. So one thing, instead of wings, he has basically, instead of feather wings, he basically has wings, but they don't fly. They're basically like a collections of vines that are coming out of his shoulder blades, which he can control, which I guess is taking a little bit from another character I like, of Swamp Thing. Funny little fact, there's a point where Karam tries to kind of charm He says, "Truly there is no other being like you," admitted Karam to the Gema of War, and he's kind of saying it sarcastically. But Korra responds with, "Flattery will get you nowhere." And that is actually a reference to one of my favorite Looney Tunes episodes, where Bugs Bunny is interacting with Taz, and Bugs Bunny essentially says an insult to him, but Taz, because he's Taz, takes it as a compliment. He's like, "Flattery will get you nowhere." So it was kind of a little callback to that. I really like that episode. So they battle, and obviously it's a book club, so spoiler alert. Karam doesn't defeat Kor in a traditional sense. He tricks him, right? So he basically gets Kor's blow to power this scale of Vandir, and it kind of sucks Kor into the scale. So Kor is in the scale of Vandir. Vandir being Satan, who takes the form of a black dragon. So it is a literal scale off of the dragon, the biggest enemy in all Fostra. So it carries great power, and it holds Kor. And so we will see Karam deploy that scale, although Karam might not look the same when he comes back out, or Kor might not look the same when he comes back out. And I'm not going to say what happens at the end of the book, but in terms of the scale, I won't say what happens to Kor, but in terms of the scale itself, we shall see it again. Not in Saga 2, but in Saga 3, you will see it again. So it's not going to disappear forever. The next and the only other section in this chapter is Narbad waking up and kind of going through this last day that is normal. It's kind of like it provides a window into Narbad as a character. I really wanted this chapter to kind of really be a very big character development chapter. So we get a lot of a sense of Narbad's inner dialogue here. So one in particular, on page 36, he's talking about how, he wishes sentient life was like the trees, because the pine trees and the oaks, they're very different, but they all, coexist together in peace and harmony. And so he's kind of just lamenting the nature and state of sentient life, how we can't really coexist with people that are different than us, or at least it's very difficult, and it often doesn't happen. And also that we typically think that the answer to violence or injustice is violence, that we try to fight prejudice with more prejudice, and we try to fight fire with fire. And I will be honest with you, this is kind of meant to reflect our real world a little bit. Because I think a lot of times especially the last few years, there was a lot of justification for things that were clearly wrong, but they were justified because of things that were done to other people's ancestors and things like, no, it's still wrong. And you committing these atrocities just makes you look bad, and it actually makes the problem that you're upset about worse. So it is a little bit of commentary on kind of just how things are done around, in society today, but it's not meant to be like overtly like this is the way you need to think. It's just Narbad kind of contemplating life and the situation that he is in. Of course, Narbad has a very, very real reason to seek out vengeance, more so than anybody in any group of people I can think of in the modern world, at least in the West. So it is kind of also a dig of like, hey, this is what actual trouble looks like, and even then, violence for violence is not always justified. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes violence is thrust upon you and you have to react to it. But the message here is that you shouldn't be instigating it. Self-defense, sure, but there's not really justification for instigating the violence, because you're really just, he's like, if I were to fight the men of Nokvior and rise up and kill them, I'd be proving the very thing that they say about me. And so I'm sure you've heard that argument before, and there's a few counterpoints that are made, especially with Hale and Narbad's conversation in the mine. And that's another thing this conversation's meant to do, is it's meant to show you that Narbad is growing, and that his conversation with his father did have an impact. So you really kind of get the idea of who Narbad really is. When he's around his father, when he's around friends, he might put on a certain bit of extra bravado to seem tough, to not be vulnerable. But here we get access to his mind and what he's thinking. He's just basically walking up, taking a hike up to this bluff where he likes to go to contemplate and think about things. And there's a lot of beautiful scenery of nature. I love describing nature scenes, so you get to see a bit of that here. And I think it really, really just kind of sets the stage for Narbad as a person. He has braved all this injustice, and there's all these horrible things going on, but he kind of reconciles some of maybe the things he was thinking about in chapter 1 after, he heard what his dad had to say. And he's just like a very real person. He's just trying to figure out what he thinks. He's trying to figure out, okay, well, now I got what I wanted. We're having this battle. There's an opportunity for us to gain our freedom without taking revenge, right? Even though they're probably justified to take revenge. There's another way that's been presented to them. And now that he's gotten what he wanted, he's thinking, well, do I really want that? Because I want to be free, I know that, but it looks like that freedom, me getting in a brawl in a tavern with this guy's nephew, has created this opportunity where we might gain freedom. But what is the cost of that? How many orcs, including maybe me and my dad, are going to die for that freedom to be true? So it's Narbad contemplating the consequences of his actions, the words of his father in the mine, and just kind of trying to figure things out like a real person. I think that's the way that we operate. We try to figure things out and try, if we're growing, we're trying to take what people have said to us and apply it and improve ourselves and try to figure out what we think about things. Even when we get something that we think we wanted, sometimes we're like, well, do I really want it? Like you want that job really badly, and then you get it, and you're like, well, do I want it? It's going to come with all these other challenges, So Narbad is just kind of contemplating that. He's like, I could die in battle, Narbad realized. It would be all over, and I would have accomplished nothing in this life. I would have made no impact. I'd be forgotten in an instant, as if, as if I were never even here. And that's a real fear for him. And I think that's a real fear for all of us. I think we all fear that we are going to leave this earth and ultimately be forgotten. Nobody wants that. And so I think Narbad's wrestling with things that we all wrestle with. And I really wanted him to be a very relatable character. I think he's wrestling with questions that we all ask ourselves, and if we were in his situation, we would be asking as well. If you were enslaved, you'd be asking these questions. If you basically created the opportunity to free your people, you would kind of feel the weight of, okay, well, if it goes poorly, it's my fault because I'm the one who kind of created this. So there's a lot of pressure on him, and we'll see how it goes. Next week, we'll look at Chapter 3. Every story has a beginning, which is kind of also a callback to the end of the book where it says, through blood and ice, every legend has a beginning. Well, this is that beginning. We're going to see how Narbad, becomes the legend that he is later in life known as. If you've read the Silver Mist, you know that. So next week we get to meet probably, if people don't say that Nerys is their favorite character, or Narbad, it's Talia. Talia is just a purely lovable character. It's impossible to hate her, basically. When I did the personality test for the campaign of the book, most people got her as the character that you are from the book. So we're going to meet Talia, we're going to meet Ruth, we're going to meet a lot more of the characters that are going to fill out the cast of this. So we meet them, and we're kind of just introduced to these new characters, and we'll get an update on Bjorn and Karam, and that's the chapter, basically. We're going to meet a lot of the characters that are going to fill out the cast, so next week I'll probably bring out the visual companion again, and we'll cover that next week. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. This has been the Mistwood Publishing Book Club, Chapter 2. Peace out.